Hello, welcome to Concord TV, Community at Your Service, proudly produced by Concord High School students. My name is Krista McGrath. I'm the Director of Campaign Management for Granite United Way, and today I'm very excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, 211 New Hampshire. With me today are three very special guests. We have Heather Eichholz, the Director of 211 New Hampshire, John Tobin, the Executive Director of New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and Tina Ricketts from 211 as well. So thank you all so much for joining me. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's start with the very basics. Heather, can you just give us an overview of what 211 New Hampshire is for our viewers who might not know?
Yeah. 211 is an easy to remember number that you can dial in New Hampshire that connects people and services together.
Great. And how did it get started here in New Hampshire?
About 14 years ago, there was a House bill passed that, just had a blank moment there. A House bill passed that established the 211 Commission, and that was made up of state legislature, Department of Health and Human Services, and some for-profits and nonprofits that got together to sort of look at what existed in New Hampshire for information and referral. There were 7 or 8 lines that you could call in New Hampshire for information and referral, depending on where you lived in the state. There was one that was statewide, and the commission really looked at how could we streamline this and make it work effectively for the whole state from one location using one resource database. And they went from kind of designing the way it would work in New Hampshire to having that design approved, and then petitioning the Public Utilities Commission to get the legal designation to use that 211, that 3-digit dialing code,
right,
statewide.
So you can literally from any phone, 211, can you do it from a cell phone as well?
Yeah, you can do it from a cell phone if you're on the border, depending on what cell phone tower your phone attaches to when you dial that call. You might end up in Vermont if you're calling from Lebanon. You might end up in Massachusetts if you're right on the border of Massachusetts, but we also have an 800 number that you can use.
Great.
That'll work to connect you to New Hampshire, whether you're in New Hampshire or not.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, John, you've been a big part of 211 from the beginning. Can you just talk a little bit about why you got involved and how?
Well, I think it's a really valuable service for people who need help and they don't know where to turn. That's the bottom line. The world is really complicated. Lots of different services. People in crisis don't know where to turn, and 211 sorts it out for them.
Absolutely. And with New Hampshire Legal Assistance, has there been a partnership or has there been a strong connection?
It's been a very strong connection. 211 sends us a lot of our clients, people who have a legal problem, they don't know where to call, they call 211, and 211 says, you need to talk to New Hampshire Legal Assistance or one of our partners, and sends people that way. 211 also keeps track of their calls by categories, so they can tell us where people are calling from, how many people are calling. They have a lot of great information, as well as being a great source for people who don't know where to turn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great that it's all consolidated in one place now. I can't imagine trying to call 6 different numbers depending on where you are in the state. Tina, you have been with 211 since the beginning, right?
Right, 2007.
Fantastic. And so what is your role there, and how did you first get involved?
When I originally moved to New Hampshire, I had never heard of 211, even though there was one where I was originally from. And then as I started doing research on it, I found out it was a really great program, and it was something I really wanted to be involved with. And so I started out as just a person on the phone, and now I'm the Associate Director and Resource Database Manager. So, I pull together the resources and make sure that the information is correct for the people who are on the front lines and on the phone.
That's wonderful. So are you constantly kind of looking to see what else is out there, or do people come to you and say, hey, we're a new organization that's here to help, or how does that work?
All of the above.
Okay.
I pull information from everywhere, from newspapers, TV, people who've called us. I go to meetings, get proactive with just digging up any sort of resources I can from any source that I can.
That's a huge job. That's a lot of work to get all
But
of
it's a lot of fun.
That's
It's
wonderful.
a lot of fun.
So Heather, there's been a lot of changes or growth, I should say, with 211 over the years. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of how the calls have increased and what the numbers look like for this past year?
Sure. When we first started out, we launched in June of 2008, and I think we may have taken 150 calls that first month, and we were really excited to have that many calls. Today, our average call volume is anywhere from 3,000 calls a month to about 3,500. Wow. There have been some months that we've taken over 6,000 calls in a month because there was a disaster somewhere in the state, a windstorm, an ice storm, people with questions about things like H1N1. So depending on what's going on, we definitely see increases and decreases in call volume. In the past year, we've taken about 50,000 calls, and I brought some information on Merrimack County data. If you want, we can talk about that a little bit too. It's sometimes interesting to hear what people are calling about, what needs people are having in the county where you live. And over this past year, we've taken the most calls for free tax preparation, connecting people to the volunteer income tax assistance programs, and also AARP tax aid.
Great.
And making a lot of the appointments for those sites too. So, and answering some general questions people might have about what do I bring with me when I go? What should I expect? How do I get there? Things like that. So we've taken 3,148 tax prep calls for Merrimack County over the last year, 1,025 homeless services calls, 393 calls for healthcare resources, 350 electric bill payment assistance calls, 346 calls for food and meal resources, 334 calls for legal assistance, and followed by things in the same general numbers. Heating fuel payment assistance, that's a big one, especially since our winter was sort of prolonged this year and the temperatures were colder for longer. What people have usually been able to count on didn't really last as long this year as it usually does. So we get a lot of calls for help with housing expenses, rent payment, security deposit help getting into housing.
So you guys really are that full, you kind of hit all the different markets of people that are in need throughout our community.
Yeah, mental health, addictions, mortgage delinquency and default counseling, people having a hard time making it work and wanting to stay in their homes or looking for alternate solutions that might work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about it and to talk more about the details of how it interconnects with our community.
Sure.
Thank all of you at home for tuning in. We have a short message from Granite United Way. Please stay with us.
I've given to the annual campaign for the United Way for over 20 years. For me, giving through the United Way is just an easy way for me to make sure that the dollars that I want to share in my community are shared in the right places, to the right organizations, and to people that I want to see get that money.
What's wonderful about United Way and the payroll deduction program is that employees from all walks of life can donate to their local United Way. They can make a donation that's 50 cents a week. It enables employees from up and down the organization to feel as if they're making an effort to support local social service agencies and to budget that effort over the course of a work year.
I find my support of the United Way over the years one of the most important things that I can do. To be a leadership giver is to be an honor and to be a part of the United Way. Their service in the community is so vital and makes such a difference. There isn't any way that we could get along without them.
United Way programs are critical. They were there for me when I really needed them to get new clothes for my first professional job. Now I get to give back to my community by volunteering on the Granite United Way Community Impact Board.
One of the greatest things about United Way is that the money is raised locally and it stays local. We distribute that money, and the decisions about the distribution of that money are done at a local level, even though it is a statewide agency.
My wife and I have been Granite United Way supporters for over 28 years, and we've been pleased to do so. We've seen the great work that it does, we've seen what a great investment it has been, and we're proud to support the Granite United Way.
Join us and support Granite United Way.
United Way has a unique opportunity to be the collaborator for a lot of the nonprofit programs out there. And by bringing these organizations together and talking about the various resources and ideas they have, they can certainly take what are just simple opportunities and make them actually come to fruition, which is a wonderful thing to see happen. And without United Way, that would be a huge missing piece in that puzzle.
Thank you again for your support of Granite United Way. Without that support, hundreds of programs and thousands of our neighbors right here in New Hampshire and Vermont would not have gotten the help that they needed this year. They got the help because of you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to Concord TV, Community at Your Service. I'm Kristen McGrath, Director of Campaign Management at Granite United Way, and today we're talking about 211 New Hampshire, the resource referral line for residents in New Hampshire. I have three wonderful guests with me: Heather Eichholtz, Director of 211, John Tobin, Director of New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and Tina Ricketts, Associate Director for 211 as well. Right. Before the break, we were talking about all the different things that 211 is involved with, and it sounds like you partner with so many different organizations and companies. I wanted to know, Heather, if you could just share a little bit more about some of the partnerships you have with some of our local nonprofit agencies.
Sure. I think the partnerships are really kind of what keeps 211 going. Without the partnerships, we wouldn't know what was happening statewide. It's a big job to try to get a handle on what's going on in every corner of the state and everywhere in between. And the partnerships that we have really keep us informed and involved so that we understand what's going on and what's available to help with whatever it is that's going on. We have a lot of partnerships with for-profits, nonprofits, state government, and I would say probably the biggest partnership is with Public Service Company of New Hampshire, who offered up some space generously for us when we were talking about bringing 211 to New Hampshire. One of the struggles was, how are we going to house this program? How are we going to pay the rent to house this program? The computers, the technology, the IT support. How are we going to keep this going on that end? And luckily, the president of PSNH was on the United Way board at that point, on the Granite United Way board, and they were revamping their call center in Manchester and offered up the space for 211.
That's wonderful.
So they house our program and support us with the technology, the electricity, their phone system, and the space to operate, which is huge because it helps us to be able to concentrate on the job that we're there to do and not worry about how we're going to keep this going.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing.
And I think too, off of that, it's funny for people. Are people allowed to come in and see the space at all, or is it a closed space?
Yeah, I mean, if we set it up beforehand, anyone can come and visit as long as they call and arrange that. It's a really secure building.
Okay.
You do have to have a security background check that you pass before you can actually work in the building.
Yeah.
So I think it being one of the largest utility companies in New Hampshire, they really have to protect.
Absolutely.
Their building and employees and
off
assets.
of that too, I was just thinking that when I envisioned 2-in-1, I imagined this enormous call center with all these people. So if you could talk a little bit just about the size of your group and what you accomplished, because I think it's really incredible.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. And usually when we go out into communities to talk about 2-in-1, people are shocked to find out that we only have 5 employees. And we're taking over about 50,000 calls a year. That's pretty amazing. So
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day.
Crazy.
I think how we make it work is that we just do. That's been our attitude since the beginning, is make it work.
Yeah.
And we're all motivated to keep it going because people need it. And we all believe in what the mission of the program is, and that's to give New Hampshire residents access to needed services and information.
Yeah,
so everyone that's there has to be committed to being there.
It's you guys have a great team. It's remarkable the work that you do. I really appreciate it. Like I said, when I came and saw it, I couldn't believe how small it was.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you guys get so much accomplished. So we appreciate it. All the New Hampshire residents do. John, I know that New Hampshire Legal Assistance also has a partnership with 2-in-1. I don't know if you can speak a little to that.
In the last 5 or 6 years, New Hampshire, like the rest of the country, faced a really huge foreclosure crisis. Because of the deep recession, there were many more people facing foreclosure than had happened in years and years. And we, with funding from the Attorney General's office and in partnership with 2-in-1 and a couple of other agencies, we set up a project to help those homeowners, those families, keep their homes if they could, or find other alternatives if necessary. And 2-in-1 is a big part of that. 2-in-1 takes those initial calls from people who need information, who are in crisis, and sorts out whether they should be talking to a housing counselor or whether they really need to talk to a lawyer right away. So it's been a great partnership. They have the visibility and the ability to screen these cases and send people where they need to go. So it's been a great example of a really effective partnership.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it gives someone, again, that central line to call for all of those resources. For individuals that are referred to New Hampshire Legal Assistance, what are the typical types of things that they're looking for you?
People call us about the basics of life. And one of the things that's interesting about the numbers that Heather talked about is a lot of the problems that people call about, they may say it's a housing problem and they say it's a legal problem, but it's the same thing. People who are in danger of losing their shelter or trying to get shelter for themselves or their families. People who need their basic income, basic subsistence income from Social Security or unemployment. People who need access to health care. And people who need protection and safety from domestic violence. And we also help elders with issues revolving around nursing home, revolving around financial exploitation and debt collection harassment. So a lot of things that are really crises for people, we help them, and 2-in-1 helps get people to us.
Absolutely. And I imagine, are there times that you end up referring clients to 2-in-1 as well?
We send people to 2-in-1, and we know that they're going to get to the agency they need to go to. Sometimes people need mental health care, or they need daycare, or they need some other kind of service that we're not going to provide. 2-in-1 can get them to the right place.
Yeah, absolutely it is. It's that connector that brings it all together. So you really are where the rubber hits the road. You're answering those calls day in and day out. Can you just talk a little bit about what kind of qualifications you need to be answering that phone line, and then some of your personal experiences?
Sure. The qualifications, you've definitely got to be empathetic.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the top qualifications, more important than anything, because you really are dealing with people who may be at one of the lowest points in their life, and you have to be able to empathize with them, but still maintain the composure to be able to help them to locate the resources that can help them to get out of their situation. So it can be challenging, but can also be very rewarding when you do make that connection with someone and help them get back on the road to, a better life.
And now, were you had you answered calls in a similar setting prior to your time with 211, or is this your first experience in a call center?
When I was in Texas, I was a 911 dispatcher.
Oh, okay.
So it definitely a different set of crises, but still crisis nonetheless.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of finding the right resources for the right moment.
And is there a training component behind it that you like a certain qualification that you need to do before?
We're all certified by the Alliance of Information and Referral Systems.
Okay.
I'm dual certified with CRS, which is Certified Resource Specialist, and Certified Information Referral Specialist.
Sounds like quite a lot that you have to do in order to answer that phone, but
Yeah.
it makes a big impact, I think, being able to be prepared and equipped to answer whatever kind of call that you get.
Absolutely. You never know what's going to be on the other end of that phone.
Exactly. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you at home for tuning in. We have a brief message. Please stick with us.
Packers. Vikings. Packers. Vikings.
Red State. Blue State.
We come from different places.
Uptown. Downtown.
Optimist. Cynic.
We come to different conclusions.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities, our families,
United.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united.
Welcome back to Concord TV, Community at Your Service. My name is Krista McGrath. I'm the Director of Campaign Management with Granite United Way, and today we're talking about 211 New Hampshire. I'm joined by Heather Eichholz, John Tobin, and Tina Rickett. Thank you all so much for being here again. Before the break, we were talking about a lot of great stuff with 211 and the different call operators. Heather, I just wanted to know, could you talk a little bit about how this all happens? So who funds 211 and how do you guys keep the lights on, so to speak? I know PSNH plays a big part, but can you speak to some of the other partners?
Sure. I think the United Ways in New Hampshire really were the leaders that brought the 211 movement to New Hampshire and kind of corralled everyone, stakeholders, community leaders, state government, to make it happen. And in turn, the United Ways in New Hampshire, each individual United Way supports 211. 52% of our funding comes from the United Ways across the state. Our other funding is through contracts with state agencies. We have a contract with Health and Human Services Bureau of Homeless and Housing Services to provide a 24/7 homeless hotline, an emergency transportation and hotel program. We partner with the Home Help New Hampshire program. The grant there is managed by New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, and we're working in partnership with everyone involved in that, legal assistants, the housing counselors, Homeland Security Emergency Management at the Department of Safety for the state of New Hampshire is a partner who we've worked with over the years to provide public inquiry line services in times where the Emergency Operations Center is needed to be activated by a natural disaster, weather related usually, to provide a line where people can call when they need shelter, food, basic living needs as a result of this disaster.
I think that's great to know too, because I think people think of 211 as that connector for those daily needs that maybe aren't being met, but when there's a crisis or an emergency, a natural disaster related, that it's also a resource.
Right. And the needs definitely increase when people's power goes out, and it might be out for over a week or so. There's a lot that can happen as a result of that. So it's nice to have an easy to remember number to call rather than a state-funded 800 number that no one can remember.
Right,
so,
exactly. So someone who would want to get involved and say, I'm really behind 211, I want to get more involved, I want to volunteer, I want to donate. What kind of ways can people in the community help out with 211?
I think one of the best things that community members can do, businesses and individuals, is just to share information about 211. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, a coworker that 211 is in New Hampshire. Did you know you could call this 3-digit number if you have questions about things? It's anonymous, it's free, it's confidential, it's multilingual. It's a place that you can feel safe calling when you need help. And you might, I think everyone at one time or another in their life goes through something that you might not feel comfortable telling a family member about or a friend, and it's nice to have someone that's non-judgmental that you can call, sort of bounce it off of and see if there might be help for that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just sharing that, kind of forwarding 211 awareness and is a big one. We're thinking about working with volunteers in the future. It's a little tough right now because we are in such a secure building, but I think through the United Way connection, we may be able to do some training and work with more volunteers. We'd love to have interns, social work students
That would be
working
wonderful.
with us. I think that'd be a great opportunity for both of us.
Well, and it's an evolution. I'm sure that will continue to grow as things move on, and I'm hopeful that we can get more people
Definitely.
involved. John, do you find that in your work, a lot of people know about 211, or is it something that we still need to really be out there
I think
promoting?
the awareness is growing, but I think we still have a long way to go. And so I try to do what Heather says and talk to people about it and tell people about it. And it's very simple, very simple concept. The other thing I think that people can do to support it is support the United Ways, because the United Ways help support it and knit it together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. We do all that we can to kind of support the community, and I look at 211 as that connector between the people that are in need of services and some of the programs that we work really hard to fund. So it's really a great connection. Well, thank you, all of you, for being here with me today and for the wonderful work you do in our community. And thank you at home for tuning in to Concord TV Community at your service. Have a great day.